everybody is going to talk about sustainable investing and sustainability, so people are going to increasingly put their funds into these instruments.
Sustainable finance, sustainable index serve as vital tools with the ability to lead the market. So the question will be, what factor drives sustainable index to be successful products?
The key observation you can make is that there is significantly more assets linked to active sustainable products compared to passive sustainable products. And one of the reasons might be that there is, in the active financial products or in mutual funds, significantly more flexibility to create financial products or to create those mutual funds along the lines of investor interest. And the big problem with financial indices, and in particular sustainable indices, is that they are, contrary to the active products, are always limited by their very strict rule book. So there are now, I think, more than 35,000 different sustainable indices existing. But A, there's a broad range of different indices, many of them, and B, they are always very strict with respect to their rule book. So you as an investor, you can ultimately pick and choose out of many of those different indices. But passive financial products work differently. They are focusing on passive products which accumulate a lot of funds and assets. So you have diverging tendencies. One is going to have flexibility for the investors, and the other one is you need to have concentration for the passive financial products. And these things do not fit very well together. So what we are going to see likely is that there are many passive financial indices existing, but out of them only few ones are going to gather significant amount of assets, very few ones only. And likely that will be a few ones around the existing headline indices, so around the S&P 500 or around the MSCI World. Only a few ones will be really going to stick out going forward to be really successful.
Yeah. Okay, then I will ask another questions. ESG investing in the European market has witnessed remarkable growth, followed by increasing awareness and demand for sustainable investment options. Could you briefly share your opinion of the market potential and also challenge of ESG investing in European markets?
The biggest challenge is that ESG investing at some point in time is going to result into limited impact. So ESG investing is currently viewed a little bit like a Swiss Army knife to resolve many problems, and investors at some point in time will recognize that despite their focus on ESG investments and ESG investment products, these issues are not going to be resolved. And we discussed that just by investing into certain passive ESG ETFs or into certain active ESG mutual funds, not enough action is going to happen and not enough impact is going to happen with respect to the underlying companies. The key problems like global warming or social divergences are going to go away. So we are going to see that in a few years' time, people start likely to end up with some kind of frustration that despite concentration and focus on ESG, the result in the real world hasn't materialized. So this is the kind of biggest challenge, and now the potential for the time being is huge because a lot of people want that ESG investing is going to change the world for the better. But just because the people want that, People want that, and you will see a lot of increasing funds flowing into those areas, but it's not going to, in particular in Europe, you will see even more funds flowing into this direction. So the growth potential is high, but only for some kind of medium period, and then afterwards I'm going to assume that there is some kind of period is going to happen when people are going to realize that the aspired result is not going to materialize.
And so is it like it still will be a demand for this product, but they are not growing fast?
For the next few years, I'm going to expect that many of these products are going to grow fast. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So the regulation is now going to create clarity here. The industry, so the asset managers, are having a significant interest to jump the bandwagon and to create sufficient products. They can generate partially even higher fees with those products. It is socially the accepted way forward. So everybody is going to talk about sustainable investing and sustainability. So everybody is doing this. So people are going to increasingly put their funds into these instruments. But I assume that by the end of the decade, people are going to realize that despite their focus on ESG and investing, the overall result was not as they aspired. So the real world result of their sustainable investing has not materialized. It doesn't happen. So global warming is going to increase despite people putting more money into ESG investing. This is what they're going to see by the end of this decade.
But how about the social impact that you are put the objective to the numbers of the social impacts?
Most of the focus of ESG investing goes to financially material criteria. And those are very few ones. Those are related to board structure and in particular to board compensation. So on governance aspects, they're focusing on certain aspects of workplace safety and health measures. But they're not going to address the underlying problem of social inequality. So people believe that when they are going to invest sustainably, they are going to resolve the fundamental problem of social inequality in the countries. But that's not going to happen. They only concentrate with their sustainable investments on companies which are to some degree taking care about certain of the work processes, and companies which are going to concentrate some degree on appropriate executive remuneration. But it's not going that they are going to fundamentally change the underlying social problems we have and we see. And that's why sustainable investing, people believe that this is going to resolve many of our today's problems, but it's not going to resolve maybe any of them.
Then you probably answered my last questions.
Yeah.
My last question will be, where do you see further innovation in sustainable index in the next decades?
Now, what we see, now the regulation in Europe became particularly tight, and particularly European regulation now created what they call the climate transition benchmarks or the Paris-aligned benchmarks. Mm-hmm. Both of them are very sharply defined ways how you can calculate an index. And this will be, so to speak, the gold standard or the strictest standard we are going to see. Identify or to build indices which are extremely focused towards climate change. We are going to see likely over the next couple of years that the possibility to sufficiently maintain those indices is going to be limited, just because they have some very strict requirements on carbon emissions of the underlying companies. They need to be reduced on an annual basis by 7%. They do need to reduce their overall emissions compared to the underlying universe by 50%. That is already usually are going to look for companies who very often do this in a kind of very continuous and ongoing basis. Yeah, so you're going to look to companies who have a commitment to pay dividends on an ongoing basis. Yeah, and you measure that not at a certain point in time only, but you measure that throughout a period, and you require that this commitment is a long-lasting commitment. Now, the same I'm going to expect at some point in time for all these sustainable developments as well. So as we have now more transparency, we are not going to measure at a certain point in time whether a company matches or does not match the requirements for an index. We are measuring the commitments of companies throughout a longer period. Yeah? So only companies going to be considered maybe going forward for sustainable indices which are going to fulfill requirements on a continuous basis. So it's not that they are going to look at a certain date today and just look whether they are fulfilling the requirements, but you are requiring that they also over the history have fulfilled these requirements. And you start ultimately monitoring companies against commitments they have made. So now companies are going to make commitments with respect to sustainable investing and to their own carbon emissions and other social criteria, and you are going to measure whether they have matched their commitments or whether they have failed to match their commitments. And this is what you are going to see going forward, that this very focused view as of today is going to be much more broad. Companies are going to be held more accountable for what their commitments have been made in the past. Mm-hmm. But we don't know, yeah? And apart from that, you have heard about my belief that only technology is going to solve the kind of key problems. So we definitely are going to see more focus, hopefully, on technology solutions. Thematic investing is going to become more important rather than the current sustainable investing. That is at least something I hope, because otherwise we're not going to create sufficient push for new technology.